Alright, collective. So this is the family domain video, which is the 10th domain. Um, the newest one. So this was inspired by not just, the knowledge and the things, of, I've talked about my soul and, where it comes from, in the cosmos and because all of our souls do that. But it's more of like a mindset. So, like a lot of the domains, it's really just resetting mindsets. And so we can create the right frequencies of positive energy to create new realities. And this is, how I've been doing this. But, I had my focus mainly in the spiritual and psychological domains, and I did some in the finance domains, but that one was more of my wife's, domain, for a lot of reasons. But when it comes to the family domain, so there was a pattern throughout my life that I recognized. So as a child, in some of my previous episodes, I've talked about how, when I started really getting into, during my spiritual awakening over these, few years, like the big one, that, like the extraterrestrial part, of us. And, I've commented on other content creators and influencers, media, about, how our souls are extraterrestrials, and that's our extra person to this terrain. But a pattern I recognized in my own life was, so there was this movie that I really liked. I think it used to be a TV show, but I didn't get to see the TV show. I just knew the movie. So the movie was the Swiss Family Robinson. So it was like the family that they had a shipwreck, and then they started building their new home on this island. And it was so cool. Like, I was like, man, I wish I had a tree house that was like that. But then, I haven't ever been one to really watch a lot of sci-fi, or, horror or suspense, a lot of things like that, just because it doesn't quite resonate with me. But I know that there is another show, with the last name Robinson, and it was, I think I don't know what it was called, but I know there's a kid in there named Will, and they say something. I think the phrase is "Danger, Will Robinson" or something like that. So when it comes to the way that my mindsets work, for me those were signal patterns to let me know that. So I look at. It helped me kind of see, how the soul's journey goes, even though this wasn't shown, but it's like, this is how I connect dots. So, let's say that there was a situation at one point where the Swiss Family Robinson, that family nucleus, let's say they were in space at some point, and let's say that they, let's just say this just appeared out of nowhere, because it was a movie, and they just so happened to go from their spaceship to their ocean ship. So there's a lot of signs, synchronicities, and signals in there that those who know, and those who follow me can really, understand where I'm coming from on this, because the thought seeds are already there. But so they go from their spaceship to their ocean ship, and then that ship wrecks, and then they come onto land, a lot like, kind of like a Little Mermaid, a little bit, something a little bit with it having to do with Atlantis, and then they build their home, their foundation on an island. And there's all these things that happen, and I think in that they had this war with some pirates and things like that. So like that's kind of how in the spirit things kind of work, because there are spirits that, you know, when your soul comes into this vessel, you know, in some ways you can, you know, relate the flesh to somewhat of a ship in the ocean and somewhat of a ship in space. So we're kind of like in that medium, like in the flesh. So it's like really trying to figure out ways of how you're already related to that, because it's already happened. Because some people had thoughts about this, you know, and then they, you know, either directly or indirectly, you know, abuse those situations. So that's why I do a lot of what I do, is to help us all connect the dots, because there's so much out there when you get into that limitless, like everything's limitless, but it's having those disciplines. But you have to really know, like, what were the external energies that were playing against that. So I say it like this because let's say that we're already at that point where we're it's a cycle. So it's a cycle. So that's the mindset of the cycle. Spaceship to ocean ship. And now we're going to talk about back up into going to the spaceship, because we already came here. We learned ways to build our foundations and our families, and that's what what the family domain is mainly for. It's just it's, you know, asking yourselves as individuals, you know, first, you know, who would you want to invest your energy with on your spaceship mindset. So if you were to, you know, at any point from here on out, let's say your soul family comes down in their spaceship, which I've said, you know, in February it's kind of a high point. It's a month of love. It's been a pattern that I've recognized, that, you know, there seems to be some activity around those times, you know, having to do with the ETs and the spaceships and all that. And it's because, like, things are happening, you know, above us, and as above, so below, you know, that we, you know, need to start paying more mind to, or, you know, trying to really create those spaces. Because whether it happens in this generation or the next generation, there's still a responsibility, especially as adults, to you know, take note and to teach our children, you know, that there are all these possibilities in this universe, and you can still believe in God, and all these things happen because it's all creator energy. That's what a lot of the God energy is, you know, but it's like getting in touch with your soul. So, you know, in this domain, it's, you know, instead of thinking a family more in a 3D, because a lot of families seem to have those issues with, you know, getting along with each other, you know, in this more on earth situation, and that was kind of, you know, a lot. COVID kind of helped this, you know. It was one of those good things that came out of it, but for those of us that were paying attention, this is one of those reasons why COVID happened. Is because we really sort of had to look at our family nucleus and see how we're doing there, and to get back in touch with, you know, like our families, and start doing those inner work things. And, you know, and you know, just, you know what I'm trying to say. But so going off of that, this is one of those things that, you know, in thoughts and in energy, and just from my soul level, that, and my spirit guides and my ancestors, that really pointed out to me, like, this is one of those things where, you had to pay attention, and really get into those mindsets. Like, if you can't be around or handle, your family members, that your birth family members, or any kind of family nucleus you had, or people that you considered your family, because not all families blood, because you also have your spirit family, your soul family, and that there's energy in the spirit of why your birth family was the way it was, and why your, soul tribe and the family you create, the family you find, within your soul that resonates. Like, I had to build mine up, but it was always there, but I still had to do I had to do the work as an individual. So, and the children, have to do their work as individuals, but as the adults, like, there's still that responsibility. Like, we have to get back into those creator energies. So, when you go into space, it's like you don't have a lot of options, to be you can't just leave the ship. You're in space, that's just what it is. So trying to, train your mindsets and your energy to that, that's what this, 10th domain really is. It's how, we want, the people we want to be surrounded with in thought in space, because the energy you create in space does go down to a planet. Now, I'm not just going to say Earth, because there's other ones out there. So, as, we approach more of the space travel and the things that have been going on, 369, on, with the Mars situation, like, all those things are there to start. They're supposed to start, if you've seen it, or if you haven't seen it, that is another thing I have been called, here to do as a soul, and to take responsibility for, and to help heal, Earth's energy, because that's just what my soul and my wife's soul and our children's soul, we all align with that, but we have our individual ways of doing that, and we value each other in our individual ways, and we don't try to force our ways on to the other, because I can tell you there are things with one of my children where there was a resonance having to do with my ancestors, and the fact that one of my children has some sort of energy, as far as just my child's presence, that they were born with in leadership, that resonated a lot with my Native American side, where there was a pathway there for that child to take. But even though I know that pathway's there, it's not my job to force that pathway onto that child or the other children, because they have their own choices, they have their own interests, their own values, but we align in a lot of ways. But just because that energy exists, there's the value that they have as an individual, and I have to respect that. And so that's another reason for the 10th domain, is really just teaching a lot of the existing family units and nucleuses, that there are, like, to kind of get in those mindsets of there's these other ways to do things, and they work out fine, but you have to let go of your ego, you have to let go of control, because ultimately the ones in our families that are especially your children, they're already in that creator energy. So whether or not they tell you or not, there's already a plan for their soul. So a lot of our responsibility as adults is to, and as family members is to help support that in any way we can, and not try to overshadow it with our own stuff. And I'm grateful that I've done so much work to where I can, the family part isn't, the hard part for me, and it hasn't ever really been a hard part for me. It was just I had to recognize that, it was time to detach from my birth family, but I was already doing that. But a cycle came around where I had to reevaluate, so it was like a Mercury retrograde, in a way, but it was for the individual members of my birth family. And when I say individual members that way, it's because there were cycles I had to go through just to make sure that they couldn't come with me, in my next phases. And that wasn't like a hard decision for me, because I was like, we weren't ever really that close, so I was grateful for that. But it got to the point where those energies were very force fulfilling, and so when they would try to assist me in some way or support me in some way, I'm still grateful for them being present for those things, but it was like there were other energies in there working to try to keep me stuck, so that those energies can have control, and using my family, who are being more unconscious and not as supportive of my spiritual journey. They chose to be that way, and I tried to share my knowledge the best I could, and make it make sense, for them. But ultimately, it came to the point where I was it was making me tired, like physically tired, and it was bringing me down more, because I was having to lower myself and my own standards to be in those energies, to teach them. But I'm not going to sit there and keep on doing that. So that was another reason for the channel, was because if they somehow find it, or if it comes across, in their field or whatever media, however it comes across to them, this is what that's for, so they know, this is what was happening, and this is why I can't. And even if they did the work now, it's like I've excelled so much that I just couldn't be in their energies anymore. And they have their own creator energy and their own power to create their own situations. But I have chosen not to be in those situations, because it just wasn't meant to be, and that's just kind of one of those things that happens. But I can tell you that my wife, my children I have now, I did this one little project to really help build this energy, and I built something with my hands, and it was like some sort of a ship in some ways. And so I was doing that. I was very much meditating and thinking, what we would kind of do, and but they get to make up their own roles and what they do in that, because if we were called up, because you don't ever know sometimes what's going to happen. Me being a powerful seer, there are things in my life where I don't always know exactly what's going to happen. I just know what's coming. But sometimes, because God works in mysterious ways, and I do create my reality, because I'm not a victim of my reality, I'm the creator of my reality. But I still work with God, not for God. But there's still just some things in there that I have to be mindful of. And so when it came to who would I take with me, who can I tolerate on my spaceship, on mine as an individual. Even though I know my newest family members have been, I've been blessed with them, I still had to look at it in me as an individual, because when you're on, a spaceship, we all have our own tasks that we do. And so that helps, a lot with the more earthly energies, and trying to figure out how that goes, because it's not always just doing the chores, it's not always just doing the homework, it's not always, all the other things that society tells us, like, this is kind of how you're supposed to run your household. There's so much more into it, because when you think more like, well, how would that work in space, because space is a different thing, but you create your temples, and your temples receive source energy from the cosmos. So, like, there's a lot going on there. My ears are ringing again when I said that. So it's just confirmation that, what I'm putting out is already created in thought on the quantum field for families, for this domain. So, but yeah, really get into those mindsets of, like, if you were, who would you take with you? Who do you know that, regardless of whatever would go on up there in space, who would be able to handle themselves? Who would be willing to put in the work and invest with you, and not use your energy and abuse your energy, and try to overtake you? So it's like a weird kind of thing for me to talk about, because I don't really like thinking about that. When, like, someone overtaking that, but I have to speak truth to it, because that's another part of, why I had to do my inner work to, really protect myself, because as a truth speaker, there's a lot of things that I've had to say, and a lot of it was in the beginning where, I didn't really like it, but it's like, it was something that I've been doing since I was a child, but it was just, I didn't know how to protect my energy. I was still protected, but it was like, now my protection, is not just from source, because now I have my wife and my children that have done their work, and I have invested, it's like, even though I haven't, been around them or seen them, like I said, I had, only an interaction with each of my children once, in the, physical part, but with my wife, my twin flame, I've had, a few different interactions with her. But a lot of what I've done has been, it's felt like I've been homeschooling my children at a distance. That way they know, kind of like, they know what I bring to the table, and how I build my tables, and I hope one day, we'll build a table, together, like, so all as a family, like, physically do it, because that's part of some of the manifestation, how I do things, like with my hands and with my heart and with my mind, is, and my energy, my physical energy more, because when you know how to build a table, in the physical, when it comes to building tables in the spirit, it, and in, like, the fifth dimension and the above dimensions, it's trying to build a table in each dimension, and then being cognizant of, like, how that, having the mindsets of those energies. So that's another reason for the domain, just to, like, say if you wanted to build a table, in nutritional fitness, let's say, for instance, you physically wanted to build one, you could have multiple tables, because a house holds a lot of different types of tables. So it's like having those mindsets. So it's kind of like an exercise you can do, and if you have, the resources and the things to do that, or, there's different ways to build tables. It's not just with wood or whatever. You do resin tables, stuff like that. But, like, keeping those mindsets, like, what is this table for? So when you visit those tables, you give an energy to that object. So that's another part of, the family domain, is being, conscious of those moments you create with your family that create momentum and, inertia and things like that, by just physically building something together. And like Jesus was a carpenter. So, there's like all this stuff that goes really into that, and then, doing it together. But I built, tables for education, and there's certain things that I have, that I've done them by myself, but in the spirit, they were ways for me to exercise on, really teaching, homeschooling my children and my wife in a way, because, we have in our family we constantly learn new things, and so, like, that's a free-flowing energy with us, like, so, criticism isn't a thing for us. It's just us learning, but the way that we do it, it's just so free-flowing that it's not complicated, because we've all worked through all that. But it was more stuff that, my wife and I had to work on, so it would reflect, in leadership to our children. But that's how it's felt for me through a lot of this, but I had to do my work as an individual, and, even though I've done what I've done, there had to be an agreement in the spirit as well, for and energies, and me just paying attention to the signs and synchronicities and signals and patterns around me that said, you and your new family are very aligned, and we've been like that for a while, for like months, but there were still things that, it was, the house part of it, that was, the part that my wife had to make certain decisions, and I had to wait and be patient with her decisions, and, really just be in love with her process, and like I said, in a previous episode where, her transitioning from her role, that she had as a Christian witch, and stepping into her, her earth angel energy and her angelic energy that I, know her and seeing her to be like her highest light. And our lights go higher, but just for the sake of the collective, there is, the earth angel part of it. But we were angels in other, like, not just earth angels, but like those, just the part of the angel army of angels, in other past lives. But because we're multidimensional, we have those ancient galactic souls, not just ancient souls, we're ancient galactic souls. So it's like we both are very deep, and our children are as well, and so I'm very grateful for all that. And it'll most likely be my children that, or her and I's children that, really help myself and their birth mother build the 11th domain for children, the children domain. And so I'm really looking forward to that, because they're at that age where it's, because I did a lot of that work when I was at the same age they were at, but so the energies and the thought energies already exist, because I went through some things having to do with CPS and things with the government, and I wasn't happy with the way things were done, even as a child, because my soul already had a lot of knowledge from previous lives. There were things that were being manipulated in the situations when it comes to, adoption and foster care, and, things of that, in temporary homes and things of that nature that, I was not happy with. And it wasn't because of me, missing, the parental figure I had. It was just because of the energy manipulation that happens in those situations, and now there's a bigger issue of child trafficking because of those things. But I was just a child at that point. But there are children out there now that they're making more money than their parents did. They were making more money than me at one point, and so it's like God put so much in a child. And that's why children are blessings, and even though I didn't birth, my children, like I've said, there's still a blessing. Like, I still see the blessing in other people's children, because they wouldn't be here if they didn't have a purpose. And so it really irks my nerves when I see the abuse. And so I'm really excited to, you know, work the children domain with my children. And so that's exciting for me. But as far as the family domain goes, you know, it really is just about, like, you as an individual thinking about who you want to invest your time with, and set that up for yourself, you know, really for yourself, and that way you can attract the family you desire. Because if you were to be, let's just say, because it's a limitless life, and you know, everything's possible with God, in the universe, and in the divine forces, and angels, and your ancestors, and all that stuff in the spirit. You know, when you tap into those energies, it's like the things that open up for you are, it's endless possibilities, limitless possibilities, but you get to choose your disciplines. And that's another big part of it. It's like you don't want to be out there just, when you get into those energies, I mean, there's really those choices you're going to have to make where you're like, okay, like, do I want this, do I want that? Because, like, no family's the same. Like, there might be some resonance, but no family is the same, because it's made up of the individuals. So you really have to be mindful of that. And, I mean, it's really awesome, you know, and it's a gift, and a blessing, you know, to be able to build your family. Because there was someone, and I wish I knew where it came from, but someone out there, you know, said that the family that you create is more valuable and important than the family that you were birthed into. And that's true. And that's kind of one of those hard things where you're like, but is it? But that's how we create legacies, you know? Like, you have to know when to detach from your old life and create your new life. And that's something society really doesn't focus on, because there are brands and entities and industries that make money off you being stuck in that nepotism. And I've done an episode on that, you know. And I know it sounded like I don't, you know, I'm not for family, but I really am. Like, I mean, but I'm more of the soul family, because I know what can happen at any point in time. I mean, you don't ever know when you could wake up and something happens, and you're called to, it's like that movie Armageddon, where those guys were drilling oil, and then all of a sudden it was like they needed him to go up into space. Like, that could be a possibility. Like, are there things like, oh, well, this couldn't happen? Well, because anything can happen, nothing's impossible with God, you know. So, like, everything's possible. And even in the universe, it's just like, it's because it's all thought energy. So just putting all of that into play, and then the cycle of, you know, the space family Robinson, and then the Swiss family Robinson, you know, still, the acronym still SFR in both of those situations. You know, it's that was the media's way of showing us that there is a possibility of this cycle. So regardless if it happens now while you're living, or whatever age you are, you don't ever have to stop, because, you know, Abraham, and his wife were blessed with a child at very old ages. I think he was like in his, like, 100 and something. And then I can't remember how old his wife was, but it was a guide and a possibility. So there's, like, a lot of things out there where I've connected the dots, where I'm like, there's a possibility you can be called up and be like, all right, time to hurry up and learn to go to space, because it's time for you to go, and we want you to be one of them families that goes to Mars and creates the new life, you know. So, like, and that came a lot when I was doing this, and I was like trying to stay away from that, but I had to keep it as a possibility, that it was my link to creating space in space, and being chosen to do that as a family, and like, who would I take with me? Even though I already knew, but I still had to do the work to make sure and process it before I went on with the manifestation of it, even though I knew I was already gonna get that. But you can't not do the work for it, even when you know, because and sometimes you gotta be careful with those doing too much energies, and like, this is why it's important to know thyself, because those things can really trick you. The mind does a lot of things, and there are people I've met that are therapists, counselors, psychologists, that whenever I have conversations with those individuals, even they, were baffled about, the way that my mind works. And I had to be careful with some of them too, because those conversations created cords, and I cut those cords, but they gave me more confirmation than they, tried to take. But there wasn't a lot of taking. A lot of it was just kind of like those passerby energies, where I was like, oh, okay, well, like, some of them were like, I went to school for so many years to get that degree, and when I got to practice, and I got in my business and stuff like that, they would say that all they learned had nothing to do with, it was very little like the book, and then they kind of would go into this whole thing about how they felt ripped off. And so that's another thing that I try to do, is it's like, you don't have to always pay for an education, because your soul at some level got a degree. And so if you resonate with it, that's why I'm really big about exploring your soul, and doing that inner work, because you'll start discovering things about yourself, that you didn't even expect. Like, there was a point where I wanted to be a chef in my life, but then it was like I kept getting stuck in that energy. But it was, because I had to recognize that it was an alchemy thing, and I had to do some of my ancestors that were alchemists, and healers and things of that. And food is one of those things. So it was already on a resonance, but I really had to detach from that. And it took me longer to detach from that, something that I really didn't want to do, to get to where I'm at now, where I deal with quantum mechanics, and quantum entanglements, and the space domains, things like that. So yeah, it's a lot, but that's what gets me excited about getting back, getting to the house, and being with my family, so we can really build out this channel, and hopefully they kind of find their own channel in there, because it won't be all just mine. But obviously we'll have those times where we probably create episodes together, and maybe they'll come on and we'll talk and all that. But I those are the things I'm also excited about, is to kind of just see how it grows after reuniting with my new family members. And so that's exciting, for this next phase of building the channel, because it does do a lot for the collective, and I do get to see the results in my environment of like the work that I've done on this channel. And it's just because I had the thought that I know that it'll do good for the collective, and it wasn't about control. And so like, that's what really makes it different. But there were energies also that that I had to recognize along the way, when I in content creating, because I really didn't want to get on here and make a channel at first. I had a lot of willpower, that I knew that it was going to happen eventually, but there was a year that I had to take, a whole year, to really decide whether or not I wanted to do it or not, because there were energies trying to control that. and they try to disguise themselves as my spirit guides, but they were not, because they had an agenda to take a lot of content. So then I had to think about protecting my channel, and there was like so much more that went into it, that just like me starting a channel, I had to be very careful, because I care about my words and what I'm putting out. And so it was building my protection and not having all those third parties and those brands and those ads involved in that, because that wouldn't resonate or align with how I'm here to teach the collective how to do things with their own power and their own energy, and not be dependent on those third party energies. And those can be anything from family members to friends to just people you're coming across in your daily life, or places you visit, or the things you purchase. Like, there's so much shit goes into that, so it's like being disciplined in that. But there were energies that we're trying to come across, that we're trying to create negative energy to make me believe that like, it's pretty much like I would hear these in the spirit, like these energies, saying things like, well, if you get married and you have your family, then that means that you're going to stop doing your channel, and I'm not going to be able to get, what I need out of this. And so, like, that was an energy that I had to deal with. And I'm like, I wouldn't ever think that. So it was an external energy trying to come through. And as a seer, sometimes those things happen. And it's not easy being a seer, because things like that happen. But it's like, because I know that, like, obviously I wouldn't say something like that. Because, like, there was a point, too, where I was like, I'm about to just shut this whole thing down, because I got tired of hearing that. And I'm like, why does it keep coming through? Like, I'm not around anybody. But then I started, gave it some time, and I'm like, God, please just help. Like, I need to figure out where this is coming from, because I know it's not me. And I still don't know exactly who it was. But I have an idea of that there was an industry that was trying to create that, and part of it was attached to YouTube and Google, and that was kind of what was like ticking me off about it, because I did put some trust in that. But there are certain algorithms that my wife and I had to create to that don't fall in line with the general public, because we also do programming and ways, so encoding and things like that. And she's good at the hand part, and the tech part of that, as far as like the physical part. But I'm good at it as being a seer, and doing it without having to physically do that with my hands. I do it with my words mainly, because I have to get to automatic writing. So, but she has her way of doing it. So that's what really makes us, really great, together, is being able to, we have our certain ways we do things, but we complement each other. Like, we ship each other, in the way that we do things. And so, we send the package, And so that's a really cool thing that I really love about her and I's dynamic. But it was still like, there were energies trying to come against that. And so it's like really knowing, like, and tracking that down, because I had to, speak truth to that. I had to pray about just, like, trying to get that removed, because I was like, that is the most ridiculous thing. And that let me know that there was probably someone that was dealing with, that was watching my channel and listening to my channel more, because it's more of a listen channel. But they were probably just going through a thing in their life where they didn't know. But I'm like, there's plenty of content on here. There's times where I didn't want to make a lot of content, because I didn't, expect it to be so much. But I knew it would be a lot. But it just, in the time that I've done it, I'm not doing it every day. I have, like, these little spurts. I'll kind of send it out, but that has, it connects with, the cosmos. It connects with a lot of things going on and, that aren't on Earth. So that it's a very spiritual flow. And so it's like I was probably, that person, because it was like a person and like kind of like it evolved more into a group of people, but eventually it went away because I prayed about it and I spoke truth to it, and I'm speaking truth to it again because I have to. So in case anyone else, that decides to follow some of how I do things, that it can be a thing. I hope it's not. I'm just going to say that it won't be for the same for you, but that is something I had to deal with, because I'm like, I work with God, and my family and I work together, and in alignment, with our God, and so it's, I had to show a lot of compassion, in the spirit to that energy that those individuals are creating, because it's frustrating, because I'm like, I've been ready to go to the house for a hot long time, but I can't allow that type of energy into my household, and so I had to take care of it before I got to that point of going back, going to the house, and the new beginning with my new family. So I had to address that, and even if I didn't, it wouldn't have followed anyways, but it was still just as a responsibility because it was there. I couldn't just not, even though I was going to go to the house regardless, but I still, as a responsible, person and soul and spirit and all that, I still had to address it. I still had to speak truth to it. And I thought it was ridiculous and annoying and inane, because I call it an inane spirit. So it's like annoying, but it's like ANAYING. So like someone would be like nay to that, and so it was I was like, well, you're not gonna mess with my anointing. So there's like a AAA kind of thing in there, but I was like, I've been anointed, but your energy's annoying and you're being an annoying, so I had to get rid of that, and it didn't take very long, but it was just like one of those things where like, well, let's cleanse, and it's kind of like one of those, just a small little, no big thing for me, and it happened, like I did what I needed to do, but it was just like, out of all the things that I've dealt with, some things just come across really petty like that. And it happens to everybody, and I wish it didn't. But it's just kind of like those things that just remind you, like, this is how far you've come, and this is that inner work, So it's like really just, that's really what it was, and that's what I boiled it down to, because I'm not going to give that energy power, And a lot of the time, like, part of it was like me just saying, just shut up. Like, I was like, shut up. Like, whatever energy you are and whoever you're trying to come through, like, shut up. And I'm like, I rebuke you, devil, in the name of Son Jesus Christ, and I say that, I don't just do the 3 times, I would do like the 10 times, if not more, like, until I felt like it was just gone, because I was like, this is just ridiculous. And then the praying and all the other things, and like, it was just nonsense, like, like, but I was like, I had to be cognizant of the fact that there's probably just somebody in a group of somebody's, because somebody was connected and was probably talking to others, and they were just connected in those thoughts, and that's how it grew, because sometimes you can only take one. But I was like, I looked at it in a compassionate way, and I was like, they're probably just on that part in their journey where maybe they're in their hermit mode. Maybe they're in their hermit mode, maybe they're in their solitude mode. That's how I had to view it. And when you get in those modes, even myself, I dealt with that, but I really didn't have things where I had to latch on. because I've always had God there to guide me through, my angels and my spirit guides, my ancestors, and all the divine magical forces, and the good stuff, and the good things, and the good energies, and my twin flame, my wife, and our children to help me get through what I needed to get through, as we're building our family foundation. And so I had to, I didn't really feel like I needed to attach to anybody else. If anything, I was literally trying to get away from everyone as much as possible. But I was like, because I went through that, I had to recognize that that's probably what that negative energy was coming from, is somebody that was following my channel that was in their hermit mode, their solitude mode, and that it can be scary. That's probably like the more scarier one, because you're literally building in that phase, and so you're letting go of a lot of things, and you're trying to bring things in. That's why it's kind of important for those phases to happen. But there's a lot of loneliness that's felt, but you have to feel it so you know what you don't want, and that really sucks. And I don't really like talking about that, but it happens though. And I've made episodes where I've talked about where I've been in those lonely phases, because you have to kind of get there, but I got to choose that. I created that. No one else created that for me. I had my choices I made, because I was like, I need to get away from all these other energies, because they're not serving me anymore. So that's where it kind of came from, is that whatever I do in my channel, there's probably an episode where they, I try not to look too much into it, because I'm really past that. I really have a lot of faith in, everything that I've done so far, and that it travels well. But I really had to have a lot of compassion, because it when it comes across, it just seemed very selfish. But I had really had to look at it like, well, maybe they're going through lonely phase. Like, I didn't have a need to latch on to anyone or anything when I was going through all those phases, but this other person's built different than me. They're not me, so they had a thing, and I had to send those thoughts of goodness up into the quantum field, so that wherever it was trying to come from, the message was sent. So I do a full send, but it was just me just sending the healing and unconditional love to that individual, and the individuals that came with it, with that one seed of thought, and those that know like why I said it the way I just said it. So it was a thing, but it disappeared very quickly after I did my due diligence. But it was just like it made me feel happy that I was like, well, I'm grateful that I got to feel that in a way. But it just kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, well, sometimes that stuff happens. When you're a content creator, you have to be really mindful, what you're putting out, and then like what you're going to get back. And even putting out positive energy, I mean, there's still negative energies, because in science that's kind of how that works. But I believe there's more positive, a majority, than there are negative. And they're limitless. There are things that really can work off positive energy more than the negative. And so I'll make some episodes later about that when it comes to me doing more module, learning lessons. There'll be like more branch from a lot of the episodes that I've done, but it's still just like, it was just something I had to speak truth to. And I was like, it just felt like really weird that this far, that's someone watching, or listening to my channel would think that. But I feel like it was trying to come across as just an innocent question, like, would you still create content after you come into reunion with your new family, when you shift from being on your evangelist journey to your going to your family back when you go to the house, going to the house. And I mean, I looked at it like it was just a valid question at first, but then it just kept growing, like, because I was trying to really just, it just kind of like baffled me, that it would come across, but I tried to look at it more as a valid question, and it's like, well, it's still not going away. So then I was like, well, there's something else going on here. So then I had to go through the discernment phases that I do, but it just came out as somebody was just, they were in their hermit, solitude, alone, loneliness phase, and there were just other things that they were dealing with, and they probably were detaching from a group of negative energies. That's why I was feeling it the way I was feeling it, because it was like built up. And so then I was like, well, finally, I'll just answer, and the question. And it was like, no, I'm still going to continue to create content. Me pivoting, doesn't, hurt anybody. Because I am mindful of what I do, but I can, I make my choices, and I have, I create my reality, and those things don't, but I still, help, the collective consciousness and working through that. But that's just an example of like how one little thing, if you don't treat it right with compassion and understanding and love, unconditional love and healing energy, that it can try to build itself up. And so it's like just facing those issues just dead on, no matter where you're at. You don't really get complacent, especially when you become more spiritual. It's like complacency is not a thing. We're always learning new things every day. I learn new things every day, but there were a lot of individuals along the way too that were well versed in their spirituality, but they got complacent, and then they just kept kind of pushing things off, and that was another thing I had to put in there with the discernment. So I was like, well, this is probably just an energy that, some of the ones that were older and got, complacent, that they didn't handle it the same way I did, and they just really sloughed it off. And I was like, well, it's too easy of a fix for me, because of the way I use my energy very consciously, and I'm disciplined, and I'm more disciplined than those that were before me. So like, I am a better version of that, those energies that the ones before me, have done, and and I'm confident in that. So yeah, that's just an example of like, sometimes it's just those little quick fixes where you just have to be like, I send this, healing, unconditional love, forgiving, and compassion, understanding energy to whatever this is that's creating this, whether it's a thought or a person, and kind of spell it out for yourself and for them, and just do a full send in it, and it'll usually just go away, really quickly. I mean, I was able to do that within like 5 hours. It was just kind of like I was trying to just have a day off from some things, because I needed that, and I was trying to plan a theta day, which is like where I put my, I go the whole day in like a theta mode to really just like connect my conscious and my subconscious to make sure I'm doing my own work. But I guess that was something that was trying to pop up that wasn't mine. I'm like, it's not my work, like it's yours, but I'm recognizing this is a thing for that individual and their energy. And like, it sounds like I'm saying a lot of the same things over and over again, and that's how energy does. It has this continuity to it where it's like it just builds and it builds and it builds. And so it's like some of the smallest little things, like you just have to, whatever way you do it, you just kind of got to take note of it and try to heal it and send it. And it's just so easy to do it sometimes, but I wasn't trying to slough it off. I was just like, I'm really just trying to plan my own thing right now. But it was trying to come in and scope creep me. I was like, well, I'll just take care of it really quick. So I did. And that's really where, a lot of things are moving to, is like, because you don't always have to physically do something. A lot of what we do is all thought. It's all energy. It's all thoughts. So being, cognizant of that is a big deal. So, with that said, that's really what I got, for some of the examples for the, where the family domain is, and like having that mindset of like who and what do you want to invest your energy with, not for, but with, if you were to, if or when you were to be picked to go into space, like who would your family, who would you take on your spaceship? And so that's the mindset. So with that said, stay blessed, collective, and until next time, spread positive energy. Bye.